Well, it's finally here. It's that special time we have been waiting for. Elden Ring, the DLC. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree.
You lost 5% of your brain.
Me lose brain? Uh-oh.
How's it going? Welcome back to another great video, a majestic video if I do say so myself, because finally, my boys, we are taking a look at Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, okay? And I've been excited about this for a very long time. Now, in modern day gaming, we often get confused by this terminology, and I think it's worth clearing up because I think people are looking at this a little bit with the wrong lens, okay? This is not DLC. This is more akin to something like Phantom Liberty, Blood and Wine. This is an expansion, okay? This is not just simply added content, and Dark Souls have always been known for giving great DLC, great expansions, but I would still call them DLCs because they're, you know, pretty meaty. For example, in Dark Souls 1, when you have to go and fight Artorias, that's a great piece of DLC, but it is still very short, and I would still say that is DLC. Shadow of the Erdtree is an expansion, okay? This is almost half the size of the whole base game of Elden Ring, and Elden Ring is a massive game, okay? Especially if you take your time with it. So I think people need to understand that, but also if you do understand that, that's why so many people are excited for this Shadow of the Erdtree Elden Ring DLC, because this is going to add a lot of content and a lot of lore for the people who care about that. This is the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree review, and this is based on all of the gameplay so far, the preview events and all of the hands-on access and all that kind of stuff. Now from the hands-on experience, we can analyze and delve deep into what Shadow of the Erdtree is all about. So that's exactly what I've done. I've gone through so much research so I can give you an accurate look at this game before it releases. And even though this is Fromsoftware, okay, and it's, you know, they've never done anything wrong before in the past, it's one of the few developers that actually care about putting out quality products and amazing games, okay? So it's safe to say you can probably pre-order this, but still I would encourage people to never pre-order games just because of modern day gaming practices, and it just doesn't set a good standard for this industry when it's so corrupt at the moment. Elden Ring was an absolute masterpiece, okay? It completely showed up the rest of the gaming industry, and it's crazy that it's almost, what, like 2 years old or something at this point, because it doesn't feel like it's an old game whatsoever. But honestly, this game was just fantastic, and it still is fantastic. And I've done a massive video on Elden Ring before. I've also done an updated review of the game. It's just a great quality game, and I did a massive critique on it because there's lots of things I don't like about Elden Ring, because I'm a die-hard Souls fan. I absolutely love Dark Souls 1, and surprisingly I love Dark Souls 2 even more, and I did a whole video on that, which I'm sure not many people out there are like me who love Dark Souls 2, and I'm not doing it to be like a Souls hipster, trust me. I just think it's a good game, and the DLC is some of the best. But Elden Ring was always just kind of the weird cousin for me, but I have grown to love it and appreciate it, and I can still see as a game for the masses, okay, it is still obviously, I would say, objectively better just because more people can have access to it, and it's very polished and refined. But I just feel like a lot of the design choices were a little bit wrong, because I love the challenge in Souls-like games, and I don't like how you can just get past everything in Elden Ring by using your stupid little goat. If they took out the goat, then, you know, me and Elden Ring, we would be best buddies.
That's totally a goat. Kiss me, you rogue. Oh, yes. Yes.
But I have done a full playthrough of it without the stupid goat, and I've got to say, it's so much better, because then you can't bypass all the environmental dangers and all that stuff. So I love Elden Ring, so, you know, I just want to put that out there. I don't hate Elden Ring, but I will be critical of this DLC, because I think it is worth criticizing Fromsoftware from a point of love at this point, because they make such fantastic games, and the Souls game, Dark Souls 1 and 2, are some of my favorite games to ever exist, and they literally changed my life. I literally have tons of Souls figures. I've got a giant goddamn art book. I don't do that with any other games. I don't really care that much, but the Souls experience, it really transcends you, and there's actually a deep philosophical message behind the Souls games, which I won't get into in this video, but it really does say a lot about life. The game world has a lot to say with its metaphysical themes, the themes around nihilism, and, you know, justice and pushing through hard times. I think we can all relate to that. The Souls games just mean a lot to so many people, and finally we're getting maybe the kind of last Souls-like experience from the original creators for a very long time, which is very sad. So it's very important that we be critical of them, because as much as I love Fromsoftware, we don't want them just to rinse and repeat the same game ideas, the same mechanics over and over again, and they have got a little bit too comfortable with doing that. So let's take a look at Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree review, and I do hope you enjoy this one. If you are new, make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. It only takes you 2 seconds of your time. That's right, only 2 seconds. Not that much, and it means absolutely everything to me. I put my heart and soul into this channel. If you like OG, old school YouTube, not the Mr. Beast crazy style of trying to, you know, get the most views and analyze and retention and all that kind of shit. If you like what made YouTube good, okay, then join this fantastic community here. Become a wise one. If you like gaming content and philosophical videos, I blend the two together to make something unique. So join the channel and become a wise one, subscribe. And I have recently gone full-time trying to do with a channel my size. It's kind of crazy. I really do appreciate any support that you might be willing to give me. If it's a small donation, a thank you, checking out my music on Spotify, whatever it is, I appreciate it a lot. So let's go.
And so kindly Miquella would abandon everything. His golden flesh, his blinding strength, even his fate. But we are not to kill. We choose to follow. Will you walk with us?
So like I do with all of my reviews and my yearly reviews as well, which is a series I cover, I'm going to break it down into positives and negatives. And from looking at my list here, my notes that I took down after doing this all day, really analyzing everything from hands-on, basically there's only a few negatives, because this game DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree review, is very positive, and I'm sure the other Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree reviews are going to be very, very positive, and no one will dare criticize Fromsoftware at this point, which isn't good, okay? We need to be critical of everything, but honestly, there isn't much I don't like about this. And yeah, let's just get into it. They've added a nice new coat of paint to the soundtrack, okay? And that is the first positive, which I see nobody talking about, which is a crying shame. Music is always underappreciated in games, and as a music producer, trust me, I know, it's very, very annoying, because without good quality music, okay, which sets the tone, the ambience, a game feels hollow, and Souls has never been known for having, you know, abundance of music in it. It's a game focused on that, you know, hollowing silence, at least Dark Souls is. Elden Ring is usually, there's always a subtle soundtrack playing for the most part, and here they've just added this beautiful kind of mystic overtone to everything, which I really like, and then the grandiose moments are even more crazy, so I think they did a really good job with that. The next positive is Elden Ring is a goddamn beautiful game. From the base game, you should already know this. The locations that you can discover are just absolutely great. The detail is just Fromsoftware's best, and it's just so beautiful, okay? The physics, everything about this game, and the fact that there's so many different playstyles and so many different movesets just make this like one of the ultimate RPGs, you know, fantasy games out there. I just absolutely love it. But here, they've kind of stepped it up like they always do with their DLC. It's a little bit more fantastical, I would say, a little bit more high fantasy instead of that kind of dark fantasy that they were known for. There are some beautiful places where you're wandering through, you know, these kind of fluorescent forests, and these weird, like, kind of spiky worms come up and say hello, how's it going to you. It's a great time, honestly, and there's some beautiful vistas off in the distance, and I like how it's a weird kind of mirror version of Elden Ring itself, like the tree. Whoa, I'm autistic. The next positive is the fact that they really stepped it up when it comes to the kind of pacing and the level design, where sometimes Elden Ring felt a little bit poorly paced, and I still have a major critique with it, where you can get over-leveled and then some areas just become completely useless, or vice versa, some areas are just completely overbearing and they're too challenging until you level up. Dark Souls never used to be about that. You have to hit a wall and just keep going. That was the point, I always thought. But Elden Ring took a much wider, open approach, and I do feel like they focused it much better here. There are some areas that are very clearly for, you know, lower level characters, so you can get a taste of the DLC, even if you're not fully ready to commit to it, which I like, and I think that's a really good point worth highlighting, and it's just better paced, okay, when it comes to exploring dungeons, for side stuff, and then these kind of legacy dungeons and all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit more linear, and I do like that, actually. And it just has more Souls-like vibes, I would say, especially with its design and the creatures. Some of the creatures truly remind me of something out of Dark Souls 2, which I really appreciate. And I think they really took inspiration from Souls as well when it comes to the art style for this one. And it's a lot more haunting and creepy. And yeah, I just like it a lot. So I think they did a good job here. The areas are just fleshed out more. They feel much more detailed, and they feel much more coherent, okay? Like, for example, this area has this certain group of enemies, and then the boss in that area makes sense. And that didn't really happen with the base game. Like, you would go into a dungeon, and it would just be like a bunch of random enemies that, you know, don't really fit that area, and then a random boss that you've seen before, and, you know, maybe it's too giant to even fit in the cave. Like, how does it even get there? But I'm just saying it makes way more sense with its enemies variation. It just makes more sense with its enemy variation, and that type of detail matters a lot to me. So also, we get a new upgrade system, so for people who have been goddamn grinding Elden Ring since it first came out, you know, there is still, you know, more progress to be made, which I like, but it can only be used in the DLC area, some of it, so bear that in mind. But I do like that that is there for the people who are, you know, max level and stuff like that. Now, of course, the next positive is the bosses. I don't think Elden Ring has the best boss design compared to other Souls games, but they are still great. But I think that they made it here. For bosses that I've seen so far, they feel a little bit more refined and less gimmicky, okay, less frantic, and they've kind of gone back to that, you know, really nailing their attack patterns and, you know, their different phases of attacks. And a lot of them have so many phases to them now, so that's going to be a challenge for many, but that's what makes it fun. And I just think they did a good job with the bosses, the few ones that I have seen. A small negative, and this is quite disappointing to say the least, because this is, you know, the final Elden Ring, okay, this is it. This might be the final Fromsoftware Souls experience we get for a long time, and the fact that they've reused bosses, okay, which is a major problem within the base game, for the DLC is a little bit disappointing, because, you know, they should go fully batshit with this. I know, you know, they need to sometimes reskin a boss, but I just think they should have really focused and spent even more time to create unique bosses for every single encounter to make this stand out even more. But there are reused bosses a lot, which is disappointing just from the base game itself. So a lot of people might be annoyed by that. But to be honest, there are so many new bosses, and they are all so well designed. Like I said, they remind me of the best, you know, bosses in Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls 1. And they are way more focused, it feels like, and I just really appreciate that. So I'm not complaining, it's just annoying that they have reskinned some bosses, if you ask me. But a big thing here, and this was something that really stood out to me, was it's not just the main bosses, okay? They've truly focused on the overworld bosses, you know, people you just encounter, the bosses you just encounter when you're exploring in these open areas. There seems to be way more of them. You know, when you first leave the tutorial area in Elden Ring, that annoying tree guard, I can't remember his name, but there just feels like there's a lot more bigger bosses in the kind of open world, which is good. So that was the first negative, and the next negative is a little bit of a nitpick, I have to say. And for a lot of people, they won't care. But, you know, with each Souls games and Elden Ring, it's got a lot more fast-paced for combat. And, you know, some people love that, that's fair enough. I personally like the more methodical, slow approach, like Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. I just like it more, it fits better with the old fantasy knight theme. But Elden Ring is going for more high fantasy, so it's much more suitable here, I would say. But a small nitpick is basically one of the new weapon types, the Beast Claws. The moveset is so over the top. You literally look like you've been transported from some kind of weird Dragon Ball, Dragon Slayer, whatever, anime, the way you move. Like the martial arts moveset looks so cool, but this Beast Claw moveset, where you can fly about everywhere like a goddamn superhero from Marvel, I think it looks a little bit ridiculous. That's just a small nitpick, but I feel like they really went home with the animations with these new weapon types. And that is the next positive, okay, is the new weapon types. We have 8 new weapon types, okay, and some surprises along the way. But honestly, the new weapon types are simply amazing. Like, mwah, just well done. They are so good. And I don't think people realize, like, when you bring these weapons back into the base game, this is going to change your whole experience with the base game as well. So for new players, this is very exciting stuff, because there are whole new, you know, like Elden Ring is huge, absolutely giant, and that's why I love it. That's why so many people love it, because of the build variation. But now there's even more build variation. There are so many cool things, and I've highlighted my favorites, okay? Martial arts where you're doing like these combos and, you know, like your Joe Rogan doing bear kicks or whatever. It just feels awesome, and I just love that one. I also love the kind of magic perfume throwables, but now they're not throwables, they're actual full-on weapons. I feel like that blends so well with like a mage build that you're doing, or like, I always like to play as like a holy knight, a spell sword, a cleric, whatever. I always love to play that kind of build, and this just, you know, is a perfect kind of in-between for, you know, managing big groups and stuff like that, and it's just so cool. And they've added so many cool, unique weapon types, like the kind of light two-handed greatsword. And the one thing that I've noticed, okay, with Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, is they really nailed the animations, okay? These new weapon types deal a lot with combos, so it's very different playstyle. This is the crazy moveset I was talking about, by the way, which looks pretty stupid if you ask me. But anyway, I still love the rest. But there are so many combos that you can pull off now, and that is very different from other Souls games, and that might change the base game experience for a lot of people, which isn't a bad thing. But honestly, like, it does take some of the tactical nature out of it, I would say. Yes, you really have to think about when you can land these attacks, so that is cool, but it does kind of just do it itself, which, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but either way, it's a new, cool, you know, tool set that you can play around with. So another small negative, and again, this is my own perspective. Remember, we're all entitled to our own opinions, so calm down, it's okay. I love Elden Ring, okay? But I'm just trying to be constructive with criticism. Like I said, I'm not a massive fan of Torrent. I absolutely hate Torrent. I've got a whole piece in my massive critique dedicated to that goddamn goat. And honestly, like, I just wish they took him out of this DLC. There are so many cool locations with dangerous environments, like, you know, these big ballistas, whatever they're called, these big, you know, massive crossbows shooting at you, or like these poisonous swamps, or these epic fire lava pits and stuff. But you can't, but none of it really feels that dangerous, because except for the dungeons and stuff like that, you can take Torrent anywhere. And this is a much more focused experience, much more linear, which I love. I really love that. But sadly, Torrent, it would have been cool if they, you know, made up some kind of lore excuse as to why he can't come into this new area. And it's just, you know, it makes it feel even bigger as well. Like, it would have been a win-win. But sadly, yeah, he's here. And you can bypass a lot of shit, lots of cool areas that would actually play well with stealth. There's so many cool new areas that really would work with a stealth build, which I really appreciate, because that's something the main game didn't really focus on. But again, you can just run past everything. So that's cool. And the final positive of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree review, the thing I love the most, okay? Finally, okay? They have nailed the side content to perfection. Now, don't expect every single dungeon to be different, because they won't be, but compared to the base game, that was one of my biggest disappointments, is when you go into a dungeon or a cave, they are literally the same reused assets, and it feels very gamey. And with a game like Elden Ring, which is so masterfully crafted, so immersive, so many different playstyles, you know, weapon arts, all of these amazing combos that you can do, interesting lore for people who want to, you know, delve into that. Elden Ring is such a fantastic game, and it's probably one of the best fantasy games we've ever got, and maybe will ever get. So when you see, you know, like that type of design, it really takes you out of it, or it did for me. But finally, like I kind of talked about at the beginning, they nailed that side content. Dungeons and caves, a lot of them feel different now, and they actually have set themes. They actually have, you know, contextual enemies and, you know, end bosses in them. And that's what I always felt, you know, Elden Ring was missing. It was sometimes missing that deliberate nature that Souls games were known for, but it just feels a lot more deliberate this time around. And, you know, that fits in with the whole Souls philosophical themes and gameplay nature, and I just think they did a perfect job here of capturing that old school essence and making the new dungeons feel fresh, almost like miniature legacy dungeons, which I really like. So they've just done a great job overall from everything that I've seen, and that is my Shadow of the Erdtree review. I think this is going to be one of the best Souls DLC expansions that we've ever got, up there with, you know, Dark Souls 2 DLC and Dark Souls 3, the last DLC of that game. This is going to be absolutely amazing, and for Dark Souls fans, you know, and trust me, you know, I absolutely love these games, and I love the community. You know, everyone is so wholesome, and we always, you know, share the same stupid jokes, and I just love this community. And, you know, I only really discovered the Souls games a couple of years ago, but it's really changed a lot how I look at media and games. And I know that's cliche, but that's because this type of media can be so transformative, and Souls games prove that, you know, we don't have to copy movies, we don't have to limit ourselves that way. Gaming can really be something much more deeper, and I'm just sad but happy they nailed this last DLC. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. I just wanted to gush and talk about it, and I hope you did enjoy this Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree review. Let me know if you're going to pick it up and give it a try. If you've never played Dark Souls, Elden Ring is probably the best game to jump into, and now it's a complete package. And I think now it's going to be better than ever, just simply because of the new variation, the 8 weapon types, all of this new different playstyles you can do, even with the base game. And this is just even more detailed, and that is what Elden Ring did so well, if you ask me, is the environmental storytelling and the art design, the artistry, the world is just amazing, and they've just polished everything by the looks of it, and only a few negatives, I would say. So it's definitely worth it, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Make sure that you are subscribed. If you are new, which is likely, it would mean a lot to me, and join the Wise One community. I'll see you next time. Peace out.